We're here once again live in their own words live. We're doing the second installment of the Lady DJs, my favorite ones. Once again, we have the illustrious, amazing Lori Branch with us this time. She couldn't make it last time, so I'm glad to have you here. And of course, my beautiful co host, Danny. Without
Hello.
further ado, let's get started. Please, everyone, introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are. And we will start with Stacy.
Ah, my name is Stacy Hot Wax Hill, the Wax K because of vinyl records, wax, house music DJ, although I play other things as well here in Detroit. I teach and produce. I am a virtual director. I'm directing people all around the country, bringing their events um, to the world. Streamteamio.com is the website. And happy to be here. I had a couple of radio shows, one called Bridges that I just did, and another one was called Generations. And it's my mission to merge the worlds, to let the young ones know not to forget the history and who we are, to have consistently do what we're doing now and let them know who we are and bringing them to our platforms and keeping it real.
Keep it real. All right. Next, we go all the way to Seattle for Eva.
Ooh, ground zero. My name is Eva, and I have been involved in music for probably since I was born. I come from a musical family. My dad's a virtuoso guitarist, and my mom's very artistic. And I started a house night, one of the first house nights in the city called, what was it, the place called the Underground in about 88. And I was working at Tower Records at the time, and I started finding all this amazing music, and I started playing it at this club, and I was probably 19 years old, and that was that. The rest is, they say, is history.
The rest is history. I love
Yeah.
that line. All right. Next up, we have my girl, Christy Mills.
Hello. Um, I come from music background as well, like vocals, multiple instruments. Started DJing in '97 in the Pacific Northwest, and I was kind of simultaneously I was throwing underground house music parties, and then I was an underground hip hop DJ in a nightclub simultaneously until I went to LA in '99, and then there I've thrown multiple parties, house music events, and live music events. I also host blues, jazz, soul, funk, acoustic uh, nights as well. Jesse's been to those also. And then most notably, Unity is the party I throw in LA, which has now been running for 7 years, I think. Yeah, 7, maybe 8, something like that. So, which was a weekly and now is just kind of a one-off. So that's what I'm doing.
Tell them about where you are and why you are.
So 2.5 years ago now, Chris and I, we'd been in LA. I'd been in LA for 20 years and he'd been there for 15. Chris, also known as Mr. Boot Sauce, some of you know, he throws Unity with me and he's a great producer. We both produce house music as well. And 2.5 years ago, we decided not to be in LA full time anymore. So we put everything in an RV, kind of donated everything, downsized and simplified our whole lives, put everything in an RV. So now we have a music studio in the RV. And we're producing from here where we can just produce from nature, get inspiration from nature and then go back into LA as necessary. I'm also an actor, so sometimes we'll go back for that. But so we're just kind of right now on the Oregon coast, but drawing inspiration from nature wherever we can to make music, which has been really nice. I can, let's see, studio's over there. So, yeah.
Yeah, they did a great job with that RV. I'm
Thank
actually
you.
jealous because we discussed the idea of actually getting an RV and move, and they did it way before I did. So I was
But
really
you will.
Well, I'm doing something else. We'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
Next up, we have from New York, DJ Brenda Black. Unmute yourself.
Hi,
There you
I'm
go.
Brenda. I have been a full-time professional DJ for over 20 years. I've been very fortunate to be able to play music for a living and play live to over 1,000 people every weekend. It's been fabulous. And right now I'm working on DJ Brenda Black's Disco Dance for Shelter Pets and Wildlife, which benefits the nonprofit academic program training foster kids to work with animals. And their dual mission is to prepare foster kids for adulthood and help animals at the same time.
All right. Does that mean you're done?
Yeah.
That was short and sweet. I like it like that. Next up from St. Louis, we have Alexis Tucci.
Having a little bit of a glitchy situation there. How's it going? I'm Alexis Tucci. I'm from St. Louis, Missouri. I have been promoting in St. Louis for the last 30 years. In 1990, kind of fell into my first rave ever. Shortly after that, I was the only girl in St. Louis DJing at the time for the most part and wanted to play down-tempo music because there was an absence of that in town, and kind of realized that I was going to learn how to DJ better if I started playing house music with the 4/4. Kind of fell in love with it, and as I started to really get a hang of it, kind of slipped into a very fortunate situation with my partner at the time, Chris Hansen, and my introduction to playing house music live was with a live band with blues and jazz musicians while I played house music. Here, 27, 28 years later, standing on my own, but I've got a lot of projects, the Discotheques and another project I have with Ron Pat Spearman from the P-Funk All-Stars. And, I've just been really fortunate to get to still build rooms and parties with Night Chaser here in St. Louis for the last 7 years, while growing my career as a DJ, Burning Man, and traveling to Africa for Africa Burn and kind of all around the country here, and then out of the country doing what I do, as well as producing, elements of other people's festivals or my own, has really led me to where I am today, which is, loving playing in front of a large audience, no matter how I can get it. And thank goodness for streaming during this crazy time. I'm glad to be here.
Yes, we're glad to have you.
Thank you.
Next up, none other from the birthplace of house music, Lori Branch.
Hey, what's up, Jesse? I don't know how I got on this illustrious stage, but I appreciate it. I'm inspired. I'm like taking notes. You guys are rocking around the world. So, Lori Branch, I'm from Chicago. Started way back when house music culture, house music canon. I'm a child of the warehouse and all that good stuff. And been doing it ever since then. Do a lot of house music. Spent a few years as a hip hop DJ and working with some groups. Right now, I'm working on a few projects, but I have a podcast called Vintage House Podcast. It's a show we do, WNUR 89.3 in Chicago. We started, it's just a studio show for radio show, but we've moved into sort of the virtual space, and now we're on every week virtually. So you can see us on Facebook and YouTube and Twitch and all that good stuff with my co-hosts, Lauren Lowry and Kevin McFall. And I'm also working on a really cool podcast with Burnell Bird. He has a podcast called The Bird's Nest. And what we do is we break down the history of house music in like multi-part series. So like if you think of a show from public radio, one of many of those sort of investigative series shows is kind of like that. So we're doing like the first one is about the Hot Mix Five, which is a group that started in Chicago and was really popular on the radio, and we're kind of responsible for like bringing house music to the mainstream. So that's on now, and we have a lot more to come. And I'm also with a project called Good Girls with DJ Lady D and VD Girl. And that's enough. I know we'll have time to talk, but thank you for having me. I really appreciate it and love that to see all these beautiful women's faces, and honored to be a part of the discussion.
Of course, we couldn't do it without you. That's why I had to do it again.
Oh man, that's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, no, it's not. No pressure. You can handle it.
Yeah.
So let's get into it.
Without further ado, it looks like we lost Shiva, so when we get her back on, we'll maybe have her introduce herself. Let's start with the first question. This one is going to include...
Here she is.
There she is. Awesome. Shiva.
Man.
Oh my gosh, I
Tiffany,
just
introduce
dropped out.
yourself.
Am I here?
Yes,
Oh,
you're
we're gonna
Hi,
in.
give it
I'm
a try.
Shiva Tiffany.
All the way
I
from
don't
San
know why, but my
Francisco.
computer completely dropped out. So I'm back. I'm back.
All right.
Where are we? Can you
Introducing
hear me
yourself.
okay?
You sound great.
Okay, great. So I'm Shiva Tiffany, and I'm from San Francisco, California, and I've been here my whole life. Are we on question one still?
We're on the intro,
Um,
so who you
That's intro.
are, just a
Mhm.
bio.
okay, just a bio. So I'm Tiffany Graydon is my name, but my DJ name is Shiva Tiffany. And let's see, I am just a good old-fashioned DJ from San Francisco. I've basically for the past 25 years been running after hours in the city. So that's my main little niche of the house music scene is underground parties. And I've successfully had an after hours, which is kind of rare to go so long for an after hours, but I have one for about 7 years in a dog patch in San Francisco, and that just recently ended. So now with the pandemic thing, I'm just teaching myself how to produce these days.
There you go.
Excellent, excellent. Let's get into the nitty gritty and the meat and potatoes. This first question, we're going to take turns on maybe just for this question, go from the same order that we did our intros. This one's going to involve a where and a when. So the question is, what made you want to become a DJ?
And we will start with Stacy.
Me?
Oh, okay. Because I come from a music background. My older brothers and mother are
Stacy,
music
if you could turn your mic up just a little bit, it would be nice.
Okay, I can pull it a little closer. Is that better?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay. So I was into music, and my brother always had a wall of components and records and things like that. So I always knew I wanted to be a DJ, and but I wasn't want to be that person that got on the say, hey, you're on FM 98 and start talking all that. I knew that was not for me. And one day I stumbled up into somewhere called the Chessmate, where our godfather of house music here, Ken Collier, rest in peace, was here because
Ken
Ken
Collier.
Collier, who the Frankie Knuckles is in Chicago and the Larry Levan
Oh,
is in New York,
yes.
it was Ken Collier, Detroit. And because I was kind of inclined looking at components and stuff, I heard music mix. And I went, how did they do that? And I made my way up into the booth, found out how they were doing it. And that's all I needed to see. And so I went out and bought me two turntables and a mixer and started at it. This is 30 plus years ago. And that's when I took off. I was at it maybe a year or two before I went professional. And throughout my career, I've been a Billboard reporter. I played around the world. But just the love of the music is what made me want to be a DJ. And one of the things that I'd done in my career, I competed against 600 DJs in 1985, and I won the contest. I took first place. And in 85, house music wasn't popular, but I was always a rebel. And the record that I played was On and On in the middle of that, right? I
Right
still have my
now.
two copies. I spent Chi-Town is my second home. I don't know how many times I've gone there, load up my car, back, and I still feel that way about it. So I am my heart and all that is right there. And even though Detroit is the home of techno, so the rebel part of me again, I've been on numerous radio shows playing on mainstream radio when they wouldn't play this music. And since I mastered my mixing skills so tough, I would slip it in there and they wouldn't know it for stuff that was not supposed
Nice.
on the radio, and I would get it in there, but I would trick it or ride it or do something so sweet that, but it made me hone my skills to making the mixing because you could not, these people's like, oh, don't want to hear that, or they're hearing it, they don't know. I just made it work. But that'll be a forever thing that I'll always remember in doing that.
All right, we're enjoying seeing your ear, Eva. It looks pretty nice.
It's a
I'm
sexy
trying
ear.
I don't want to miss anything.
Stacy, what was the landscape like during the beginning parts of you becoming a DJ in your scene?
Who?
What was the question? Was it to me?
Yeah, it's just still part of question one. What was the landscape like when you first became a DJ? So we can kind of contrast now from then.
What was it like doing my first gig and to like what I'm doing now?
The landscape of the scene.
Okay. Well, like the town was pretty much kind of R&B, and I was a rebel then and still one now. And when I started mixing, people didn't know anything about it. They were used to people closing and playing and talking, to say, hey, you just heard the song by la la la, whatever, and that's what it is. And I uh, got hired in a club. It was 800 strong, and I was mixing. I had started mixing and playing this music, so it was like a phenomenal. And so people around the city would come here because they heard about this girl, because that was already right there. Okay, a woman. So I had to, overcome that part of it. I had to lock myself in the booth because they're just like, this just can't be real. How can you do this? And it was very unusual. So I helped start a record pool here, and you know was getting all the music and stuff from everywhere. So this was at the R&B going disco, and then house invented. Then here comes techno. That was kind of like the flow of it, and I was just embracing it, as it go. I was just always, as typically people that are in entertainment or somebody just stepping out, an artist, you want to be unique, you want to be different, and that was my concept of it. I wanted to be unique. I wanted to be different. I already had the woman part down, so that was already unusual. How is this girl or this woman,
You
playing
had
this
the woman
music?
part down. That's
And
great.
even I didn't even believe the hype when I referenced back to the winning that contest. I just thought it was all a farce. They were just using us. How am I gonna, because it was when it came all down after 600, they narrowed it down to 3 rappers and 3 DJs, and we had to produce to and go on stage to do that. And also I submitted 2 cassettes at the time, and both of those cassettes won. I put one in for another DJ, Elton Weathers, who was a friend of mine, because he was just too lazy to do the cassette to submit it. And so I did 2 mixes and put his name on one and put mine on one, and both of them won. And
Whoa.
when we got to
Wow.
Nice.
to the sub
Nice.
part, so it's not that he couldn't mix, but it that happened. It really did happen. And so when
Mm.
we had to do the part 2, it came up. He stepped up, and he could play. So it wasn't like he couldn't play. I was just mad at him for being lazy. And I thought it was such a farce for DJs competing against a rapper. I'm like, how can I do that? I'm not one of those scratching people. I mean, although I decided to teach myself how to scratch just to show them that I could do it, but that's not my shtick. I'm a blender, I'm a mixer. I can do some tricks and stuff, and I could do all that. But to do that, and for me to take first place in that was just it was just unreal. I just thought the radio station was just using me. But
Hmm.
in winning that, it got me national attention, and because all the judges were from New York, and they didn't know me from Adam, and I won first place in that contest.
Well, congratulations, many decades ago.
Thank you
Yeah,
for sharing. That's an
Yeah,
amazing
that's a great
story.
story.
it is. And on and on. That's all I can remember, because they did not know nothing about no house music, and I was
Right?
just
Yeah.
determined. I'm like, and that that'll always be. I had a gentleman. He remembered this set, and he went on just maybe a year ago and repeated my set, playing it live on Facebook. Said this is what she did and played it. It floored me. It made me cry. Really, I'm just
That's
like, wow,
amazing.
you were paying attention to that tough like that. So
Wow.
yeah.
Right.
Very flattering. How about Eva?
Eva, your ear. Is your ear going to talk to us? That's all we can see is your ear. Okay, there you are.
I'm trying to hear. Can't hear very well. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
you
can hear
sound
you
great.
fine.
Okay. I just trying to hear. That's all. I caught it though.
Well, you're up. So what made
Well,
you want
thank.
to become a DJ?
Um, I would say actually, I was very influenced by Chicago and Detroit. Um, I was getting records, Best of House Music with Marshall Jefferson and Move Your Body, those very first, Todd Terry, Can You Feel It? I mean, who wouldn't want to become a DJ? Those were the records, Jungle Brothers, but even before that, funk. So, when I was working at Tower, about 19 years old, I would work the register shifts and I could play whatever music I wanted. So my friends and I, we would just, pull records and share music. I had a friend that played heavy metal and I turned him on to all kinds of dance music. And that fed our insatiable appetite. Coming from a
Move
musical
over,
family
Eva.
also. So,
Eva,
huh?
move over to your left a
Yeah.
bit. Move over to your left a bit because we're not getting your face. There you go. That's better.
Is that better?
That's better.
Okay, sorry.
Back up a little. There you go, right there.
Positioning. I still can't hear you very well, so I'm just talking and hopefully it translates.
You can't turn your speaker
up?
It
doesn't matter right now. I'll just go with it.
Okay.
Okay. So long story short, just coming from a musical family based in Seattle, I traveled the world DJing. I was very fortunate to take that passion, the early passion that I had, and turn it into a career. So I played at Fabric. I was invited by James Lavelle to play at his residency at Fabric, which was quite an honor, to do that. I was one of the first female DJs that played there ever. I started around the time of I've had my ins and outs, like DJ Rap, we were around the same kind of time too. She was about the only other female at that time. But then I played at WMC on a 24/7 party with Lady D was on there, Colette and all the Chicago house DJs. So I've been around the world, girl, just always, I used to watch documentaries and, MTV, behind the music, I would tape every show, I would never miss, LL Cool J. And just pretty obsessed, you could say. And
Hey,
I've helped a lot of other musicians and artists.
Do you know Scotty Allison?
I do not.
Okay, well, he said, "What's up?" He's from Hawaii. He said,
Scotty, do I know? Maybe I do. He knows
said,
me.
"Do you remember not picking him up for his first DJ gig in Seattle?"
Oh, okay. I know the name Scotty, so I might, just the last name.
Scotty Soul.
Hello, Scott, of course. Yes. Oh my God, so long ago. Sorry. Anyway, there you go. So I mean, I used to start, some of the very first house nights in Seattle. Vinylize. I'd play house music in one room. I'd go open up for Carrie Chandler in one room, and then I'd run over and play with LTJ Bookham in the other room.
Nice.
So very diverse, and but now I'm just really into helping. I helped a lot of young artists early on too that they were actually underage. They couldn't even get in the club. There was a girl named Alicia who teaches at Berkeley, I think now, and she was a vocalist. And I was really just an A&R, talent scout, DJ, musician. I always wanted to produce, and I have with other artists like Chris Menace in Germany, Jesse Skeens, who had the Hooch Tunes, progressive house stuff. So I started one of the first progressive house nights in Seattle, first drum and bass night in Seattle, first house night in Seattle. So I'm a pioneering woman, and I'm still doing it today.
Great. Now we're gonna have to speed this up because we haven't even got to the first question. We're already 25 minutes.
Yeah, I'm done.
Everybody kind of keep it condensed so we can move through everything. And Christy, you're up next.
Thank you.
Well, the short answer short answer. The short answer would be the music. You know, came from a musical background like a lot of you did, but then, you know, I'm also a big dancer, so any kind of dance music always really appealed to me ever since I was little. So, you know, hip hop, I was very into that as a hip hop DJ, like I said. But then house music, you know, once I got a dose of that vibe and you know, the inclusiveness of it as well, and what it represented and how it represented everybody and anybody, and just that vibe. The second I picked it up, the second I got hit with it, I just wanted to be able to express that, communicate that with people, take people on that journey, and you know, just really put people in this place. And it is to the point now where I've learned to even, I meditate before every set now, just because I take that responsibility of creating the energy, you know, that seriously. So it, you know, it's just the music, it's the feeling of it, and it just made me want to do it immediately. And again, what it represents, you know, as far as, you know, no matter what sexual orientation, race, no matter what you are, you're welcome, and that appealed to me right away. So that's what pulled me in.
All right, Brenda.
I had to unmute myself. Well, I didn't pick DJing. DJing picked me. I was working randomly at DJing at some places, but not really. And then I was also working at a radio station, WBAI, producing radio drama. So I had some experience running a board. A friend of mine who was at the time a drag queen, her DJ didn't show up. So she called me. She's like, "Hey, I know that you can do this. Can you come in and run my show and DJ?" And I came in, and the manager really liked what I did, and they hired me. And then another person hired me, and another person hired me. And after about 6 months of continuously working, I said, you know, I guess I'm good at this, and I really enjoy it. And I always hear, I have no musical talent at all. I have no rhythm. I love to dance, but I always hear music in my head. Like I hear music in my head right now. Like there's music going on in my head. If you see me moving, it's because I hear music in my head. And then 6 months in, I said, I'm going to make this a career. So then I did, and cut to 20 years later, I just continuously worked. Of course, you know, there's ups and downs, but this is what I've been doing. I've been very fortunate, thanks to God and to all the people I've worked with in the crowds that would come to hear me. And I started in 1998. I happened to be friends with Danny Krivit, not knowing that he was Danny Krivit. But when I became a DJ, he got me into For the Record. And when I was starting, I was surrounded by Frank Knuckles, Peter Rawhofer, David Morales. They were all in the record pool For the Record. And at the landscape at the time was DJing was really blowing up. Junior Vasquez had just put out his first CD. DJing, it was no longer just in the club scene. It was becoming a mainstream popular thing. It was just when that was starting to launch. When I was working in the clubs, I started out playing house music. I would mix in other things, and I also would work a lot of different gigs. Like I would play a lot of different kinds of music. But when I started out, the club landscape was house, but then about 10, 15 years later, it went into mostly pop. And then I played that, and that was, I think I answered the questions. It was like, how did you start? What made you start? What year?
Yeah,
And what was
that
the
was good.
landscape, right?
You did pretty good, yeah.
I had 3.
All right, let's go to Alexis.
All right, well, I talk fast, so hopefully it'll go quickly as we keep moving through these questions. It's nice to be asked about my DJ career because I think I wear the hat of promoter more often than not. It's been really exciting to grow my career over the last, significantly the last 7 years. I mentioned Burning Man earlier, but it really was an opportunity where I had pulled away from live music, which was my introduction into DJing. Like I mentioned, my former partner is my ex-husband, still today my best friend. We had a project, we were doing 250 shows a year for about 9 years, where I played house music. It was much more banging, Latin tech house, I'd say, but I played with blues and jazz musicians. I attribute a lot of my interest in DJing with live instruments to the fact that while I was learning and falling in love with the rave culture in the 90s, I also was a deadhead and was touring, listening to live music all over the country. And that inspiration to fuse the two was really what laid the foundation and kind of a backdoor entrance into the climate of DJing from being a promoter. It was interesting after 10 years of throwing raves to finally be on the front lines instead of being behind the scenes as a promoter. And I really fell in love with playing in front of large audiences, and it's continued to meld and mold. Got away from that project, had a variety of different projects with insane musicians from St. Louis, Missouri. And, then I'd say like that 7-year mark is when I really started standing on my own 2 feet without the crutch of live music. It wasn't the easiest transition. Along with that came the transition of vinyl DJing to digital DJing, because I realized that my commitment to playing vinyl wasn't nearly as important as my commitment to playing in front of a live audience. And I was going to do whatever it took to learn how to never prohibit myself from any audience just simply because I couldn't drag records there. So I decided to teach myself how to play digitally. Again, it's ironic because my musician friends were the ones who put Serato on my computer for the first time, because I was so begrudgingly giving up my records to spin digitally, and then the flash drives or whatever. The music, the options that I could play was like a bit jarring because I like all kinds of music. But once I started honing in on my sound, my community of friends that have really inspired me, my previous inspiration came from the West Coast, the Hard Kiss Brothers, the Wicked Crew. And then my Chicago friends, Derek and Mark Farina, when they were all in Chicago still, I remember running through airports with backpacks on, going from rave to rave with Derek. I mean, I'm old, so I've been doing this a long time, like a lot of my peers on this panel, and we've got the badges to show for it. But here I am now, and with the friends that I've had that have brought me up in the last 7 years, married with this event that I've been doing, Night Chaser, which has kind of tagged me as a disco DJ, although I like to play all kinds of music, has really brought me to where I am today. And I fight pretty regularly between being a promoter and a DJ. It's a struggle because I've been a promoter my whole life, and building rooms is something that lights me up. But recently, I can't get enough of a crowd in front of me. And even with COVID being in practice for the last year, there was no question I was going to figure out how to stream, and I was going to figure out how to get into the homes of the people that had supported me for years. And that exchange, even through a laptop, is something that gives me life every minute, and something that I can't wait to return to.
Well, we're going to get into that a little later in the show, so let's save that for later.
I'll say that. I'm into it. But that's where I'm at now. I'm a mother of 2, and I'm promoting and I'm DJing as often as I possibly can. And it's, being around all of these women when I started. And I know in our own our respective industries, we all were some of the first. It's nice to still be relevant this many years down the road.
Yes, you are.
Thanks,
Lori,
Alexis.
tell us about your career.
So thanks again. I'll say this. I'm a baby of the warehouse culture, house music culture. We talk about house music as in a culture and a canon. And I was lucky enough to kind of, get a start in both of those arenas. And the warehouse, the famous warehouse, 206 South Jefferson, with Frankie Knuckles as the DJ when I started going there as a high schooler, and just fell in love with the music. And I had a friend, John Pierre Campbell, who was neither one of us were DJs, but we liked to buy records. So we would go to all the record stores, used record stores, new record stores. That was when you had Tower Records. You couldn't find underground music there, but you'd go to imports or lots of them on the north side. And that's when you had to go in there, and you didn't have Shazam back then. So you just had to go, that song goes da 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 da, that's how we would describe it. and the good retail, DJs who worked in the stores would know, okay, I know. And then they got to know you, and they pick out your stuff. And like Brenda was saying, my path was very similar in that it was a sort of an accidental DJ. We had DJs, Jesse Saunders. I think, I don't know if you were around him, but Chosen Few was our group DJ, and one of my colleagues, I was in a group called Vertigo. There's our little social clubs, 1980. Um, the DJs, he hadn't worked out the contract, and so Chosen Few wasn't sure if they're going to show up because those were the premier DJs, and they showed up late because he hadn't worked out the contract. Anyway, it was a hot mess, and so they were like, "That's never going to happen again because Laura, you're now officially the DJ." I'm like, "Oh, okay, really? Well, you have a lot of music, so you go learn how to DJ." So I had to learn how to DJ, and I of course loved it, and I got it right away. Thank goodness, because spinning with wax um, on cranky non-digital platforms, as you guys, whoever had those Geminis, you remember those little pitch controls like that, using your finger, putting the penny on so it doesn't skip, all of that back way back then. That's how we learned, and luckily it worked out for me. And so that was it. I think Christy mentioned about the sense of community, and I was coming out um, as a bisexual person, and I was exploring that kind of part of my identity at the same time. And so it was just really a magical period, for me, coming out at a young age, being caught up in one of these places that has just become like iconic as a warehouse culture that led to the house music canon, and being around folks like Jesse and Wayne Williams and Craig Loftus and Frankie Knuckles and Craig Cannon. I can go down the list. Um, they were really my guideposts, and that's how I get started.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you. Last but not
I like
least.
that condensed version, because if you read her story in the book, it is long. So she condensed a lot
Everybody's
of that.
got long stories.
No, yours, no, it's good, and it's definitely an enjoyable read. But I mean, you got a lot to unpack of your
Okay.
career and whatnot. So
So
that was
much.
great.
And
Thank
the
All
you.
right,
Bay
Tiffany.
Area beauty.
Jesse, one of the questions I
that
said,
too.
how are you gonna have 8 women on here? And we love to talk. And how you gonna get this done in an hour? I just want to see you pull this off. And you got 10
Well,
questions and 8 women.
well,
Please.
today everyone seems to be long-winded. Usually, everybody keeps it short and sweet. So
Well,
we're
it's
gonna
not
try
like
to
we have to
run
be
through
off
it.
the clock, is it? I mean,
Because he's got all the veterans on. We got
Yeah.
stories.
yeah,
We
you
No,
got
got
it's
it.
all right.
stories.
It's all good. I already
30
planned for this
years.
show that it was going to run over, and we'll probably end up doing 2 hours instead of one. So it's all good.
Like, really? You got some stories.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. All right, Tiffany, you're up. You remember the question?
Unmute, babe.
Unmute.
I knew that. I knew that. So, what made me want to start DJing, and what was the landscape like, correct?
That's right.
What made me want to start DJing is plain and simply because I was sick of carrying around records of songs I wanted to hear, but didn't know how to play them. Because I definitely bought my first records before I even know how to match a beat. So I'm not sure if I'm pretty sure I carried around them with me to parties and was like, can you play this? And people got sick of it. So I just learned how to do it myself. And that's why I wanted to become a DJ, mostly because of the music and the vibe, like you guys were saying earlier, the scene and the all-inclusiveness really was appealing to me. But as far as the landscape goes, man, was it the end of the best era ever? I'd say my first night at a club, I was 15, and it was probably 1995.
Uh-oh.
And yep. And so I think I got to experience the best part of the house music scene because, back before then, everybody was still figuring shit out. And by the time I got into it, I wasn't even old enough to be there, but it was kind of established in the city. There's a few clubs that were pretty big staples of the nightclub scene. And gosh, was it fun. And that was from about 1995 to 2003. Definitely. Awesome.
All right.
So I'm keeping it short and sweet.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
Mute myself. All right. Thank you,
There you
ladies. we'll just keep it in the same order unless we
Okay.
do like a chime-in
Well,
thing. But is there?
let's do this instead of doing order around. If you feel a question, just take it and run with it. All right? Because if we keep going round and round, this will last forever.
Shall we signal and call on the person, or are we going to have everyone talking at once? You think
Yeah,
we'll be able to
hey,
handle
we
it?
got a room
Have
full of
conversations.
women.
All
We just
right.
go for it. We just go for it.
Let's do it. Let's see how it goes.
All
All
right.
right. Second question. Is there a distinct difference between, I'm so sorry. Is there a distinct difference between male and female DJs?
Are you kidding? Really?
Biologically, yes.
Stacy, you'd be surprised the answers we get to this question.
Yeah, well, I believe it. The
Yeah.
only difference is what's between your legs.
Yes, amen.
That's
There's
it.
no difference.
That's it. Either you have skill or you don't.
Yeah, there's no
Either
difference.
you have an ear or you don't. You listen to the music because my sex doesn't play the music.
Do you think it's different
A lot
if
of the
you are?
brainwashed people think that's what it is, but we have an ear and we hear music, and it's not because we're a woman.
That's what
Do
When
you think
people
it's
are out on the
different?
dance floor and they can't see the DJ booth, they don't know if it's a man or a woman. They just know they're enjoying themselves.
Right.
They just have different attitudes, but I think our delivery, we're much more passionate to people than the
Interesting.
men are, because I see them
I
jack
don't think that's
themselves
true.
off all the time. I mean, all the time. They sit up and ooh, you seen the pack, ooh, and give them the high five, and then the saying is, "You're pretty good because you're a girl." Cringe.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
cringe. I know each one of you have all heard that. You're pretty good to be a lady.
I know Celeste was on here last time we did this, and she said that she used to wear baggy clothes and a baseball cap so they wouldn't know that she was a female. And then after she got through playing, she'd take it off and they'd be like, "Oh my God, she was a female." So,
That's a while. That's my. I had to do the exact opposite, because they were like, you need to wear mini skirts and high heels because we want them to understand you're a girl. But my question was, I wonder if you're trained by if your mentors are men versus women. I think that also influences your style because my mentors at the time were all men. Like I didn't have any. I knew some women DJs, but they weren't doing house music per se, or sort of disco, doing steppers and stuff like that. And so I think I started to play more like a boy. And one of my friends, Craig, would say, "You play like a boy," which was not a compliment to me, but I tried to, to take it as one. But I think it depends on who you're around too.
mm-hmm.
I found that on the floor, some of my favorite female DJs seem to have ability to maybe read the crowd or be more intuitive when it comes to what they're playing and setting the mood versus a male. And I don't mean to sound, sexist in any way, but that's just my experience on the dance floor. What do you ladies feel is different between lady DJs versus men in terms of, being given certain priority? What are some of the contrasts that you guys have noticed?
They get more money.
More money?
They want to pay them more money. That's been a major fallout, and I've walked away from different things because the club owner or even the promoter felt like they are and still are willing to give the men more money than the women.
Thank you.
Yeah, and you every lineup you see is still predominantly male, even though we're talking about back when we all started, when there were a lot less of us, and to the point that a couple of you were saying, I would have the headphones around my neck and my hand on the record, and people would come up and be like, and I'm like, yeah, and they're like, oh no, I'm looking for the DJ. That's how much it disrupted their logic. They still didn't understand that I was the DJ with the headphones on my neck and my hand on the record. But outside of that, you still see a predominantly male lineup everywhere, even though now it's very different. They have a million talented women to choose from and they don't choose them. They still feel more confidence in men. And I mean, even as an actor, it's the same thing. If you guys look at any film, any TV show, you see a whole bunch of men and a chick in every, so it goes across the board. It goes into my mom as a medical professional, that, people that went to school.
I created my own festival called Geometry.
Can I speak? I would like to say that I've never had, every man I ever met who I work with was fabulous. I've never had a job where I was paid more or less than the man. I've never experienced that. And I've worked as a professional DJ for 20 years in New York City. It's how I've made my living. I've worked in bars and nightclubs. I've worked big parties. I did the pier dance. I do private events, and it's never been anything about a difference in pay between men and women. And it is a male dominated field, but nobody's keeping women out. And I sometimes, it makes my heart race to hear women bash men, because I think men are fabulous, and I think that men they don't get credit for the good things they do. Like every man I met who DJ was like, "Oh, that's great." Like when they were like, "Oh, you're great for a girl," I didn't take that as an insult. I took that as they're like, "Wow, I don't really see females doing this. Like that's really cool. Like you're cool." Like when somebody said that to me, if you responded to them negatively, they responded to you negatively back. But I was always like, "Thank you," and then we became friends. And if they were a DJ, they taught me stuff, and if they weren't, they became a fan. I just wanted to say that. Go men, I love men.
And that's fine. And they don't
Well,
mean
thank
good,
you.
because they just don't know any better. But I want to know, if you have you ever walked up to a male DJ and said, "You're really good for a guy"?
Yeah, exactly.
No,
Have you
you
ever
know
done
what
that?
though? But
Yeah,
I
I'm just curious. You love the DJ, you good, and did you compliment him by
You
addressing
don't have
him
to
by
do that. You don't
can
have
I
to do that. It's assumed, right?
can I answer the question?
Sure.
No, I haven't. But if there was a field that was female dominated, and I saw a man do that, like I'm sure seen a guy like taking care, doing something. I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but there's a situation where that might happen. Like they say, I don't think they were saying that. I cannot speak for the men who said that, but I would say generally, when I hear that, I'm thinking that it's not going from an insult. It's because we're rare. Then it's like, oh, we don't see women doing it. It's a male dominated field, so
Listen,
it's we're rare.
I
And
can,
Trying to
nobody
is
told
to
me
get
to
the
back. I don't
compliment because you're good. Not because of what you are. That's all. I want to say you're great. You're doing a great job of whatever that is that you're doing. You're a good person. You're a good person, and you're doing it well. And I love what you're doing.
I
I think
respect
in this,
that, but I just wanted to say that, and I won't say anything else about it. But I just wanted to add that.
I don't think it's
Lori Branch embarrassed guys with her skills, said Leonard Roy. And then I think Cynthia said she loves this question. So shout out to them for their participation. In the defense of everybody in the entire world, I think it is safe to say that women control pretty much a majority of our money. Women make most of the decisions when it comes to money, whether it's in a household that's family blended or single. Now in this day and age with a non-binary people and people who are being gender fluid, I think we're going to experience a lot less of that, "Hey, you're really good for a girl, I thought you were a guy" type of vibe. And I want to thank you all for being the pioneers of DJing and being a female DJ in an industry when it was obviously male driven, and it still is. So shout out to all of you for being that. I want to do something fun for this next question. If DJing is a hobby, I want to see this. If DJing is your work, I want to see this. And if DJing is your art, I want to see, what can we do? This. So, ladies, is
Can I do
DJing your
this?
work?
Yeah.
Awesome. All of the above?
yeah,
Yep.
you have. That's a loaded question.
Who wants to take a stab at it?
Work.
I'm gonna
Work.
help.
It was
If
work.
I-
Definitely work for many years. And then it became my artistic expression because I needed to make more money than what it was paying me. That's my answer.
Has
Right.
anyone else been able to support themselves just from DJing alone or producing and DJing alone?
Yes.
yes.
Yeah.
Well,
Yes.
in my case, just like Alexis, I'm a promoter as well. So it's been a combo of, DJing and promoting events and promoting live music events. And like Alexis, I incorporate the musicians in with the house music things too. So it's been a combo of promoting and DJing, not just DJing and producing.
Thanks, Christy. With the exception of people who are with someone who's in the industry already, people who are partnered up with someone who's not a part of our industry, would you say that husbands, wives, and partners get you and what it is that you do when you're doing what you do?
Not really.
When you do what you do.
It's a shining
Love
object of interest until they have to hang out with someone who knows everyone in the room, who takes
Exactly.
the stage and owns it and then comes off, and they have to wait with everyone else to either communicate or be a part of something. That's not from my perspective. I feel like I can connect with those people, but as far as someone who can stand next to someone who does that, male or female, it takes a strong person to be next to an entertainer for sure.
Yeah, I agree. My wife tolerates it, but and I didn't get it because I'm like, you should just be happy. We have these wonderful gigs and there's so many cool people and you can listen to great music all night. We get a babysitter. It's fun. And she made me realize like what it was like for her. She says, her one of her favorite performers is Ani DeFranco, who I'm like, yeah, she's all right. She says, well, imagine going to Ani DeFranco concerts every night. That's what it's like when I go to your parties. I'm like, okay, I get it. You don't have to go to any more of my parties.
Shout out to Tony Powell, who just sent a comment. He said, anyone who comes up to you and says that you're a really great DJ for a female, that's a come on. Do you guys feel like that was the come on when they were doing that? Or do you think they were honestly just surprised that you were not, endowed for like as a male?
Endowed.
Sometimes it was come on, but sometimes it was a compliment and they meant it.
I think when people say that, they just use the wrong words. I mean, I really have to agree with Brenda to a certain extent. And I don't know if it's because of how long I've been doing this and the fact that I just fought for what I wanted and I made it happen. And if people use the wrong words or people are ignorant enough to like show a divide line, I agree in the industry that, there's different pay scales and there's different attention given, and there has been throughout the course of all this. But where we sit now, work hard, take the time, you rock the stage, and you can also produce music, you can contend. And I think that sometimes people just don't know how to carry themselves or use the right words to pay compliments because it's something they've never seen before and know how to address. That's just my perspective.
For those of us who are DJs and moms, can we shed some light on other people who might have children and want to endeavor to DJ, or maybe deter them if it's not a good idea? Does anyone have insight on that?
This is my favorite topic. Do you mind? I have
Take it away, Alexis.
I have a 13-year-old and I have a 15-year-old. And, as much as I wish that they would tell all of their friends that I go into impossible locations to build these monster events, they could care less. The fact that I DJ is exciting to them. The fact that I have a trunk full of disco balls at any given moment is their favorite. It's hard, but it's balance. It's all balance. If you start raising your children with their well-being in mind, but also your own simultaneously, then your kids grow into a lifestyle that fulfills both of them. When I'm traveling too much, my kids let me know it, whether it's with their words or when they were younger, just with their energy, and that checks me and that helps me keep things balanced. And, I think that it's grounding. I think that sometimes it's an advantage having the kids because it keeps everything in perspective to where things don't blow up or get too caught up in the fast-pacedness of it that you lose sight of self or grounding. It's a really nice balance, and I try to encourage as many moms as possible to pursue this career. Moms, dads, anybody that wants a consistent, stable home life, but also wants the excitement of a fast-paced DJ career. And again, wanting it. It's not like you sign up for it when you grow. like I signed up for this career. I just ended up falling into it 30 years later, and I'm still waiting to outgrow it. I don't know if that'll ever happen.
Shout out to David Dead Inside. He said, great answer, Alexis. So he really liked the way you answered that. Thank you.
I do think you put off kids though. When I did intentionally. I have a 12-year-old, and that's a kind of a better late than never child. Let me be honest. But I did put it off for many years because of what I was doing. Because I spent a lot of time in the streets and for many years where I was working 4 or 5 nights a week in clubs, and trying to do a day job, sometimes not. And that just was not conducive for me to have a baby at that time. And so I was very intentional about putting it off. And I know that's the story for a lot of women who DJ, which is different. I mean, if you were to survey men and survey women, you would see the difference. There's a lot.
That is a big difference there. Yeah.
I think
I
it has
agree.
a lot to do with your support system at home. If you're a
That's
single
exactly
mom,
what I
it
was
might
going
be
to say.
really hard. Go for it, Alexis.
No,
Elaborate.
I agree with you 100%, both of you. I agree that the mother and the nurturing tendencies within us, which I think is what had been referenced earlier, is just our passion, compassion, the way that our energy is translated through music is one way, you know, that a woman differs from a man, but also our nurturing tendencies with our children and our, no matter how great the father is, you know, our motherly tendencies want us to be committed to our kids, and sometimes putting that off is good. I was in my 30s when that happened, so it all kind of lines up. But my ex-husband is amazing and has and so is his new wife, to be honest. And I can't, you know, like, so when people ask my opinion, I can only base it on what I know. But the two of them, you know, are an anchor when I'm traveling that allow me to have that. And that's a gift and a luxury that I acknowledge 100%.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. Let's switch gears a little bit and get a little bit of a survey on who are your favorite audiences to play for? Who do you guys enjoy performing for?
Black gay men.
Thank you, Stacey.
I like young people. I have to admit, I like playing for house heads, but I love playing for young people. You know, playing for like the smart bar crowd. You know, at Queen. You know, outdoor concerts, venues that, you know, where it just attracts a lot of young energy along with the old house heads. That's my favorite because they know how to party.
That's true. Them too. You know, that's been the blessing
Them
of
too.
part of staying relevant for all these years to be able to, you know, because these young kids, they get it. You know, this next generation, I think they're Z now. They study the craft, they understand the history. That's why doing something like this is really important. They really get it. And for them, you know, when I'm in different countries, they walk up and tell you who did the mix in this song, and it just blows me away that a dancer knows all these things, and you know, they pay attention. They pay attention uh, to the music. What they don't know is they're sampling everything that was made in the 70s and the 80s.
Right.
Exactly.
We have a show topic about that, you know.
Yeah, we should actually.
Yeah, the sample, because they have no idea. I just did a talk show this Wednesday called PAX Chat, and I had Candy J and
Oh,
CC
nice.
Peniston and a little young
Mhm.
guy here named DJ Jocko, who has an old soul. I went and he was playing, and he was jamming. He's 25, and he playing Archie Bell and the Drills. Well, it floored me. I'm like, you what you know about that? But anyway, you know, but he was, you know, jamming some house and some other stuff and incorporated with it. And when I asked him to come on the show with me, and I told him who was going to be on there, CC Peniston and Candy J, he just lost it because he said his first dance record he ever bought was CC Peniston, and I just thought that was a great. That's why I called it Bridges, and it's important to pull those type of things together for them to know because we want our legacy to live on forever.
That's beautiful.
Nice.
I hope we can infuse more education into the music for the younger generation so that it doesn't get lost about where the roots of the songs are coming from. I know at the radio station that I'm at, I'll play music and a kid will be like, I thought that was Kanye. And I'm like, no,
No.
Kanye sampled that, bro. And they're like, whoa, they didn't know. They're floored. So, ladies, do you feel it's important for DJs to stick together, or do you feel that it's maybe not likely in your experience? Christy, you want to answer that one?
I think it's important in general for, you know, women to uplift each other and stick together and have each other's backs across the board. I think it is. I don't think it needs to be like a you know, team girl, you know, but they need to uplift each other and be behind each other and definitely never compete with each other. But I think that's one of the great things about this particular scene is women in this scene don't, because people are just cool. They're chill. They're there for a good vibe. So I think that happens in general. Really quick, I want to circle back to something. I know we moved on, but I didn't get to respond. The reason that it's not a good thing to go up and say you're pretty good for a girl is the implication that it's a surprise, that it's surprising that you're able to do this as a female. So that's why I find that insulting. But anyway, yes, I do think it's important for women to stick together and uplift each other. But in the creative world in general, male or female, you've got to stick with each other, like, and lift each other up and help each other and inspire each other. And, you know, because it really helps people as an artist. You're vulnerable as an artist. So you need that energy around you to support you.
Thank you so much. With that being said, if you guys want to answer that question or this next question, either one is open. But what are some of the things that we can do to encourage young girls to become DJs? Does anyone have any suggestions for that?
Well, set by example. And one of the biggest things to me, and I talk about the talent that you need to have. You have your Paris Grays that going out and they're getting these jobs or whatever, doing whatever, doing it because they looking like ta-da, they're selling their sex appeal versus their skill. Now I've been blessed to start as a teacher. I'm teaching young girls DJ Girls Rock Detroit, but this nonprofit is throughout the world, and they teach band, they teach breakout, but they decided to add a DJ class to it, and I have changed and taught many young girls, and they are being DJs and going on. So I got them at age 10 and had them through to 16. I have a 16, well, she's 17 now, and I'm teaching her how to produce. Um, it's to pass it forward. And many times I also work at a spinning school, and they put me up saying that I'm teaching a DJ class, and I'm overwhelmed with the amount of women. Now, these are adults that come in to take the class 101, 102, 103, and I take them as far as they want to go. And I teach them in high school, and they do it. And I'm just floored at the amount of women that come up because the guys too. I don't, say if I'm teaching DJ and I'm not saying it's for girls only, it's not that way. I want to take my ideology and my direction and embrace it and go out to the world and do it. So I have just as many guys, but more women. But it's to do, it's to share it, to pass it forward, to send them your knowledge. That's the best thing to do, showing by example. Hence why I created Geometry, my own festival, because most festivals, as you know, they're dominated by men with a splash of women. And I made my own that's dominated. This is the shirt right there. It's
I
called
can't wait to learn more
Geometry.
about
Hold on, let me zoom in on that. Let's see
Is that
that.
an all-female lineup, or is it a majority of
No, no,
females,
that
but you
that was the
allow
whole
men
point of
in?
you doing it that way. It's all because I like men, meaning it's just because you're a man. I'm not gonna hold you, you know, re- it's not your fault. Um,
All
and
right.
I don't, and there's men that can play. I mean, I love them. They can bring it, but that's how why Geometry was created for that. And we were on year two. Well, it would happen year before last, and we were on year two. COVID happened, and so it didn't go off this year. And I had two people come in from Chi-Town to play. They drove in, Lady D to play. I had people coming in from all over. So, um, and we'll get back to it when things get to wherever it is. But that's another thing, a part of what I'm doing to influence women, girls, to bring back. I had my students open up and perform, so they'll get to say, "I played a festival," and I got to play with because of DJ Minx was my partner. Was one of the people. I had John Collins, so I had some big names in there with it. Just the plethora of it, and the music was mixed because we had singers, we had poets, and all that. But by the time we hit that late hour, we was banging house and stuff like that. But yeah,
Right.
so to me, that was my way of giving back and to make something like this live, to create the platform and to be able to bring everyone in, primarily women. That was, that's just what it is. So, and I never said this is the all women's festival because it
Well,
wasn't.
we can't have a she without a he in there, right? It's in
Yeah,
there.
that's right. It said to make it be everyone. And
well,
and
no
one of
one's
the
looking
greatest
for all
things,
men.
something else that happened, really good. This Girls Gone Vinyl. I think it makes this is, you know, went out and filmed it all up and down the coast of
Put it back
California,
up,
but
Stacy.
and
Put it
across
back
the
up.
world. And so there is a
Stacy.
movie out called
Stacy.
Girls Gone Vinyl.
Stacy. Put it back
Yeah.
up so we can see it.
Oh,
Yeah.
So cool.
Beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
they all signed that. That was and I got the chance to interview them all, and it was just spectacular.
That's amazing.
So did you see that? So
Yep. We
I've
got. I see
always been at
Marissa
it. As you
Guzman
said,
on there.
support
All right.
women, and to get them out there. Yeah, and one
All right.
key story that happened there. So and some of the girls played this one woman. I can't remember her name. I'd look on here and see. Uh, Ganga Sa. She played techno, big hard techno, and just gorgeous. I mean, high heels, lace, all this, that. She gave you the foo-foo look, but she could bang that techno. And all of a sudden I looked up and there was this young guy that traveled. He was one of those little Richie ones that run around to go to all the festivals. And he was crying. I mean, for real, boohoo, knockdown, crying. And I was, I was filming. I said, "What's wrong with you?" And he couldn't he couldn't comprehend that a woman was playing techno. It made him feel like that because she was coming so hard. I went, "Excuse me?" It messed with his psyche.
Okay,
Wow.
Stacy,
It
I
messed with
want
his
I
psyche
want you to
'cause he
do
said, "I
something
can't
for me
believe a
real.
woman made me feel like that."
Stacy,
Yeah.
Stacy, I want you to do something for me real quick.
What?
When you talk about techno,
Yeah.
right? With
Yeah.
Detroit being the birthplace of techno,
Yes, it
techno
is.
seems to have a whole bunch of different meanings to a whole bunch of different people. Tell us what true Detroit techno is all about.
That's a great question. That's a great question. True Detroit techno. Well, me and Al Lester call it House's evil twin, but it's
Right.
right because we're house heads. We're more spiritual and like that. But with the techno, uh, the instruments used to make it
We're
and the
almost done.
mechanical parts. So to me, it was kind of metal music put with electronic music, and here you have this sound. I feel like s- when you're from Detroit, somebody in your family worked at a factory, in some way or another, and so the repetition of choo, ta, choom, of factory, choo, ta, choom, ta, ta, choom, ta, choom, and that's the sound of a. Now this is my definition, but taking that and then and putting some effects on that and speeding it up, and it's like, I got something new here. What was born? Cybertron. That came right up out of Belleville, right out there where a Ford factory was, and just the sound and someone knowing how to take this equipment and use it and make something different. As I said, I'm a rebel. People that go in production, you always want to do something different. You were different when you made that track on and on. I'm like, who does that? How can you just put a track and it's just repeating itself? What? And that's it. So that's how the techno I think was born. Derek went and got a Yamaha 100 and was playing with the keyboards and stuff a little bit, and so hey, we embraced it, and that's how come it to me. It wasn't always great techno, but it started to get better and better. But I still took it and I would play the techno music up under something that everybody would know, and they didn't know they were getting techno, just like they didn't know they were getting housed. So you keep it familiar.
I
But to
love how
have
you slide that in there every time. You want to give them some, but you also want to make them feel comfortable so they're not alienated. I
exactly,
like how you do that.
you just can't force this stuff down there. And I recognize that because I came out of the gate mixing when I was going to the masses, and they had never heard mixing before. Okay, mind you, you playing for some doctor lawyers or whatever, this 400 or 500 people, and they would dance 5 songs and didn't realize it. And so that made me hone my skills even more. And these were with records, wasn't no syncing and no pushing no buttons and beats per minute and all that crap. You had to have it right coming right out the gate. And so with me being blessed to have been on mainstream radio all the time, I really would slip it in. It was just crazy because I say I'll make these people hear this music when we're developing something here. And so that's yep, we are the home of techno, although they released it really big in Europe is how it actually became huge. I still talk to some people right now that don't know that techno, Detroit is the birthplace of techno.
I
And
find
in
that in
Florida, I
Europe,
talked to a
Yeah,
60-year-old
that's
old DJ
interesting.
out in no, South Carolina. And I said, well, do you know who? And for them not to know, it just hurts me because they're passionate with house music and play music and they don't know that. So that's why it's just important to keep telling the stories so they get it right.
Okay,
And can't
enough
nobody
about
tell us that house
techno.
music was invented in France. Give me a break.
Let's go to house music now, Lori. We can only talk about techno for so long. We got to go to house music.
And I like
Well,
techno
you hear
too.
me putting it in there.
I like the fusion because you think a song like Strings of Life. Strings of Life is a techno house song. So, people they are kissing cousins. And so I like it. I like where they kiss. That's my sweet spot.
Hmm.
Those are the
All
songs I
right.
like.
Now, who plays tech house in this room? Raise your hand. All right. So now the marriage of techno and house have come together. Is that a beautiful thing?
Absolutely,
You
of
know, I'm
course
playing
it
with
is.
kids,
All right.
and I call them kids. I mean, it's just sometimes they want it hard, and so I don't. I can play some techno, but I would never call me a techno DJ.
Mm-hmm.
I'd call me a house DJ. But when you're in a room with the energy where they can actually take all of it, then why not go there? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
they took and made a techno version a devotion.
I think it's
Right.
tricky because when we came up, there were like 4 or 5 types of house music, and now there's thousands of different hybrids, and it just depends on who's calling it what at what given time. I mean, definitely I'm a house DJ, but I hate being put into any box, even as general as house music is. Techno is amazing. I'd avoided the genre minimal forever because it sounded minimal. And in the 90s, minimal was the ambient room. And currently, what minimal has developed into, especially since I play with live instruments, is a driving, in my opinion, what is kind of cheesy in some tech house that I feel dilutes the soulfulness of house music, takes soulfulness of house music with that racing chug of techno. It's just kind of like a more driving dance floor without constantly giant big buildups, but something that just kind of punches through. But a good set for me is a story. It's something that's long enough to be able to go from house to tech
Yes,
house, techno, drop down half tempo into something that is
yes,
beautiful and kind of, I like to jar my crowd just enough to where you can see them go and then drop a beautiful vocal in through the techno that like releases their energy and their freedom and their like emotions that techno is somewhat absent of. I love the balance of all of it together. These hour-long sets are for the birds. Do you remember when we used to advertise like Derek Carter 3-hour set? I want 5 hours all the time. I want as much time as humanly possible to get into what I'm trying to do. These hour
Yeah.
sets are tricky.
yeah.
Oh yeah. When I
That's
was
some new
coming up,
stuff.
we played sets for shoot. When I was at the playground, I played from 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. or later, depending on people decided to leave. So that 1 hour stuff doesn't do me anything. I played an event in Germany. I think it was no, I won't say it was that. It wasn't May Day, but it was one of those big rave things. And they said I was going on for 35 minutes. And I was like, are you serious? What am I supposed to do with 35 minutes?
Yeah,
You know?
crazy, crazy.
Yeah.
Hey, but you know what? Hey, maybe Jesse, come over and jump on with technoclub.net where we play house, electronic, and techno. I play as long as I want.
Nice.
Tony
Well,
Humphries
I
is
like
on
to
the stage.
bang it
That's what
out.
I do. So a minimum of 4 hours. I play. I play till I get tired.
Yeah. There you go. What's going over there with Tiff? What are you doing over there?
She mentioned Derek Carter, and that's my living room where Derek Carter came
You
and
gotta
played
hold
for
it
his
still.
birthday.
Hold it still. Hold it
I'm
still.
trying.
There you go.
There's Derek Carter right there.
So what do you have to say about the marriage of techno and house, Tiff?
I have to say that anything that brings things together is always going to be a good thing. Anything that can help somebody broaden their horizons when it comes to being open to a new genre of music that maybe they wouldn't have liked before if it didn't possess some of the qualities of something familiar to them in the music that they currently like. So I think it's a good thing. I consider myself a house, just a house purist, shall I say? And I too don't like being put in all the subgenre categories of like, minimal, tech, progressive. It's just like I play whatever I like, and I think it happens to be good, but it's house and nothing other than house. And if it, as sometimes a breakbeat or a techno song will slip through the cracks, but it's because it possesses something very housey about it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's about it. Now, as far as I want to go back to the whole how we can encourage girls to become DJs really fast. And I would say that everybody had something wonderful to say about what they did to participate in sharing our scene with.
Uh-oh. Did you
Uh-oh.
freeze on us?
She froze.
I think we lost Tiff. Where we going,
Lori?
Danny?
I'll pick up on her thread though. I think that some of the best times in my DJ career has been when I was able to play with women. And I didn't start off that way, but I was in a couple of DJ collectives, and it really was just magical for me to be with women, supported by women, supporting them, bringing folks up. And I'm doing something like that similarly now. The universe conspired to stop our progress last year with pandemic, but working with DJ Lady D and Hannah Viti Girl, she's a relatively new DJ, and DJ Lady D started in the '90s, and I started in the '80s. So we consider this kind of like an intergenerational effort, and it's really, I mean, it was taking off really well. We were doing parties in the city and planning. DJ Lady D was planning for a big concert towards the end of the summer, but it didn't happen. So I love it. I try to support as much as possible. I say, you don't have equipment, come use mine. Whatever I've got, I'm going to share it. So I think it is great for women to share and support each other, and I'm all for it. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention DJ Nakaya Soulcat here in Chicago, who puts on the Queens of House picnic. Now, this was a picnic that started 6 years ago, and there was probably 100 people the first time. The last year, which was 2019, there was close to 5,000 people. So, I mean, this thing grows exponentially year after year, and it's an all women lineup, and she puts on new women, and she has the pioneers, and she mixes it up, and it's really it's wonderful. So more power to the women, and I'm all about supporting each other any way we can.
Well, we lost Shiva. Let's ask, this is just open to everyone in the group. How does your intersectionality show up in the business? Do you find that you receive privilege from that, or discrimination perhaps? Do you want to share a story about it?
Are you asking, like, as a woman, if it's easier or more difficult?
No, more like your social presence and your political identity. Does that aid you in what it is that you're doing in terms of your mixing, showing up on lineups, being able to promote and throw events, things like that?
I think it's 50-50. It depends on who you're marketing to, especially. I mean, I've never noticed anything like this and wouldn't be able to answer this question if it wasn't for the pandemic. We've been pioneering here in St. Louis to lead the charge in safe entertainment. We want to reopen. We want to get back to work. I've been out of work for a year, as we all have, for the most part. I mean, I've been experimenting with some COVID safe events. It's been tricky. I've been trying to advise and support efforts here in St. Louis to open up outdoor, when the weather was better, outdoor venues that were COVID safe. But I definitely believe that my political / health opinions are honored and rewarded by those that share in my views of safety. I definitely want to be a part of the solution, not the problem. But I also want to get back to work, which means we have to work harder. We have to adapt and pivot, and we have to find different ways to get the entertainment to our people. That's why we've been doing the live streams, why we have these conversations, why we found a new way to engage in people to provide some sort of sanity during this insane time. Those that don't agree, those that don't believe that there's a problem, that masks work, or that there's some sort of fear, are people that I don't hear from much anymore. There's definitely been a divide line that separated me from all of that. It's unfortunate, but that has, I wouldn't necessarily say politics come up in conversation pre-COVID, but now that things are as so many adjectives, don't even know which one to pick right now, but things are so nuts right now that definitely I've seen a divide line now.
Yeah, it definitely should have never been politicized in the first place. This is about, caring about other people's lives or not. And we are lucky to have all these live streams. We're so lucky to be able to do that. But, we just have to do our best. I can't believe it's politicized, honestly. And quite frankly, people that I'm seeing posting pictures of themselves in groups without masks won't be getting my respect back after this.
So can I address your question about intersectionality? Because I think that's a term that throws throws people off. It's because it means different things to different people. But
Exactly.
but if you're talking about intersectionality, as in being Black, being a woman, being bisexual or lesbian, being straight, like how do those identities inform what you do, how you do it, where you do it? I think that you being a woman in this field, you're already understanding a double consciousness. You walk into the room, with sort of that advantage slash handicap, and I think that does it. All these women on the screen are strong women. That's why Jesse is engaging them, and so you learn how to navigate that to your advantage. And I think that that's with any intersectionality and anybody who wants to show up and and uh, you know and be present with their art form and be present with giving that love to human beings through the art of music. To that end, I just wanted to give a shout out to my two favorite books for 2019. Do you remember House, which is about Chicago's queer of color undergrounds by Micah Salkind, and he does a really great job of talking about just that, sort of how what intersectionality means in house music, and certainly we couldn't live without that one. So lots of great stories there. So those are for
Right.
anybody watching. Get those.
And one other thing that this has been like a nice ongoing discussion. I didn't want to interject too much, but the whole purpose of why I do this is because of the book In Their Own Words, which there are actually one, two, three people in this room that are actually featured in the book. That would be Eva, Tiffany, and of course Lori Branch. And I would like to extend the opportunity to each and every one of you to participate in volume 2, because this book is all about the stories and your personal journey through house. Well, starting with disco and beyond into house and techno and EDM, whatever it may be, your personal journey, because to me, those are the real stories. It wasn't about people like myself and other names, so to say, because you hear the same story from them every single time. How many documentaries have you heard, and you've heard us say the same things over and over again? This, I wanted to give the real picture of the landscape and just unpack the whole journey from a person who was just there to enjoy the music, was just there to feel the vibe, to be camaraderie with everyone, and just like, one of the things I love about Christy, and her name for her event is called Unity, because that's what it's all about. It's about uniting souls and everyone appreciating each other as well as the music, and letting the music be your gospel. So having said that, I would love to have everyone write their own story so we can feature that in volume 2. And even you guys who've done the first volume, if you've got more to add, you can go in volume 2 as well. So that's all I have to say.
We always got more to add. Who are you talking to?
The journey never ends. The journey never ends.
8 women, 1 hour? You crazy?
And you can make it as long as
Like
you
I
want
said,
because Jesse's
I
gonna
knew it
edit
wasn't
it.
going to be 1 hour. I already knew that. And we are now an hour and 23 minutes. And I'm quite
Yeah.
sure, we'll be going for at least another 20, 30 minutes. So
Glitter Mama wanted to
continue.
point out that she wanted to say thank you. The events that Alexis Tucci has put together that are safe have been a lifesaver. So I just wanted to send that shine. So thank you so much, Alexis, for that. Shout out to Shelly Harris, who's tuning in as well on Facebook. So, ladies, have you accomplished what you wanted to do in this business? If so, can you elaborate what it was you set out to do as a DJ? And if you haven't accomplished it yet, can you share with us what else you think you might need to do, or maybe some advice about not giving up or something along those lines?
Let's start with Stacy.
Have you accomplished what you want to do in the business? My direction changes a lot. I've accomplished. I love, like I said, the teaching part of it, and for me to be successful in doing that and seeing the results of stuff like that. I have some records out, but I would have liked to have put out more. And I have an EP coming out, and the title's "Better Late Than Never." And so I like to spend more time on production, and it's partly because I'm so bombarded with so many different types of things, and I like so much that uh, and the fact that I know how to produce it on any DAW and all that stuff is it's it's crazy. It's crazy. But you know, if any of you are doing any producing, you know the dedication it takes to that. And I'm easily deterred by teaching and going to play and doing interviews. Versus being, uh, in the studio. I wanted to bring out another point, and Lori, you mentioned fusion. I forget that was because of my brothers and stuff that I love fusion. So uh, coming out of fusion and learning to love rock, and I forget that know this other music, and I happen to be the assistant music director in a band called Black Women Rock, and we produce a show and travel across the country where we have 5 artists. They always change, they're different one, and and produce it. And I'm the DJ for this rock show, and playing the sounds and producing the things. So I play rock music too. I don't know how that happened. I was wondering why she recruited me so hard. I'm like, how did you know I had some rock roots? Jessica Care Moore. I don't know if you've heard of her, but a poet. And Stephanie Christian is a huge rock vocalist, and she actually took the place of Paris Gray, who was from Chi-Town, for Inner City, being the lead vocalist. And she can blow. So check a look at that. And I have a couple of mixes out on this song, I believe. And so, did I go past the question? Did I go somewhere else? That's why I said it wasn't gonna be enough time, because I could easily take off in another direction. But I'm happy to still be here, to still be relevant, to still love the music, to still be in this room with you guys, and still have my scruples. I've been to the warehouse many times, and I've got my life. I've traveled. I hit it up in there. I've done my share of taking it all in and enjoying it, and I still continue to do so. And now that's why I'm on the virtual tip. That's what the lock-in has done for me. And because I chose to play the music across the internet, but I'm an electrical engineer, and so the sound of it has to be right. And I wasn't gonna just be up there just letting it go. Say I'm on the internet. Hey, look at me and all that. No, it had to be right. Other than that, I wasn't doing it. And with me being a perfectionist, along with a team that I'm working with, I got the attention of people asking me to produce them, and I'm like, what? And the first one was an exercise class.
Wow.
That, and now I'm doing people that are doing stuff in auditoriums. I've produced other DJs, and to come around, the sound is fat. That's why that's just one of the things. And that's why we are streamteamio.com. I did a festival, not a festival, the conference, 8 hours, 5 days straight. It was brutal, but I was on there, and it had music production, all that had to do with so many different variables of it through spinning, because the DMAC. And so during the December, had an 8 hour Delta night, and they had live acts, recorded acts, songs. It's just a ton of stuff. But because of my experience in all of these genres, I'm able to take it and make it sound really good, coming through the internet. And that's what I'm high on a high horse with right now. But I'm still DJing. I'm getting more gigs. I'm like, and I'm not trying. But I'm
You're not
on.
trying. Hey,
I'm
wait a
ready.
minute. I'm always trying to get a gig.
I'm not even trying. It's crazy. I'm blessed. I'm happy for it. It's just kind of like, hey, we want you to do. You want to do it, and they're paying me. I'm like, wait a minute. If I was trying it wouldn't happen. But I've had that blessing, like I said, to be working at a virtual club. I wanted to be on twice a month. That was enough. I couldn't, there's too much. And then I'm on every week, Deep Space Radio. I have a show called Twisted Tuesday every Tuesday, 12 noon to 1. And then I host a show on Deep Space Radio Saturday. And I'd like to get you guys music. And I want to get it where you can see visually. But well, you named it the Godmother of House Detroit. That's what they named me. I did not name myself that.
Godmother.
They did not. I didn't do it. I have, but that was and the people here in Detroit, and just stuff that I do, and that's how I got Godmother House Detroit,
Yeah.
because that is my
And
stick, that is my music.
you're on DJ Stacy Hot Wax Hale Boulevard.
Yeah,
That's right.
yeah, that was presented to me for my birthday. Um, because the club Marble Bar, they throw me a big birthday party every year. I guess it won't happen this year, but that was presented to me where I got that Boulevard. I just bawled. I'm like, oh my God, for real? That. So
That's beautiful. Shout out to Tony Powell tuning in on Twitch. He said one's work is never done in this industry. I concur with that. In terms of accomplishments, I guess really the question would be is, like, and not to sound morbid, but like, like as you get ready to transcend to, the next dimension or whatever, some people are at peace with it because they feel that they've done everything they set out to do. Other people aren't ready. Maybe they weren't as ambitious. They thought they had more time. So I kind of want to ramp up the question a little more and ask some of you guys if you felt like you set out to accomplish, and did you actually accomplish what you set out to accomplish, or are you still in the process of checking some of those things off of the list?
Yeah, I think, an artist never stops growing or never stops learning. There is no destination, so it's just all about the journey. And I think as long as you're putting the work in, you're always going to be accomplishing something, but there's always going to be more in front of you, more to learn, more to do. And even back to what you were asking earlier, whether it's a hobby or your job or your art, and going back to like inspiring other, younger girls or younger people in general, like, I think it's safe to say that everybody in this room, it has been way beyond a hobby. Otherwise, none of us would be here. And not to mention, you never inspire anybody with a hobby. You inspire people by being passionate about your art, and you set a good example, as Stacy was saying earlier, by putting the work in. So, I think just to sum it up, like I said in the beginning, there is no destination. This is a journey. If you're an artist, you don't graduate. You just keep going. You keep learning more and more. You stop whenever you want to. You can do this as long as you want, and nobody should ever tell you anything different.
Well, I know there was a time when I felt like, I guess because I started so early, I started with the Chosen Few at 15 years old. So I felt by the time I got into my 30s that I was ready to retire. So I didn't picture myself being a 40-year-old DJ at the time. So I took a year or so away. Well, I was in the studio, but I mean the actual DJing, the art of DJing, I stopped, and I missed it so much. And I just got to the point, I'm like, I don't care if I'm 100 years old, I'm still going to be behind some ones and twos making it happen.
That's right.
Go ahead, Alexis, turn your mic on.
So everyone should always have something to aspire for. You don't want to say it's complete, because then you would never stop trying.
Yeah.
I
It's a
think
better way to say that, but I couldn't figure it out. I hope I got the point across.
I think to the tune of the question, though, between, whether or not if I fell over tomorrow, I accomplished everything I wanted to do, or if I had so much to do, or I had so much more I wanted to do, or I'm still accomplishing. Like, of course, what Christy said, we're always striving to be a better version of ourselves, to achieve the most that we possibly can within our own identity. But what I have used as an example of encouraging others in my industry, and again, this kind of almost ropes, 3 or 4 other questions into this answer, is that as a woman who started her career at 17 years, I started promoting at 15. I threw my first rave ever in St. Louis when I was 17. And as a woman there were no women promoters, there were no women DJs at that time in my area at all, or anywhere real near me at all. So to be that, and to establish myself in that industry, our industry, I had to prove that I was a businesswoman. I started a business. It's my business. I'm a business person. And what happens is I kept forcing, as an artist, myself into a category that I don't belong, or as a businesswoman. Now I am a businesswoman, but it wasn't until I identified myself as the artist and fully surrendered to that that I finally became successful. It's so hard to explain that to those that are still trying to attach a dollar value to their career because they really want to make it work. It's what they want their end all be all to be. And it's hard to say, hey, until you stop putting an emphasis on the money, you're not going to make it, because you have to fully submerge yourself in the art of it if you're an artist. And that's just my perspective. So it's only my take on it. But when I let go is when, both as a promoter, my show started selling out, and as an artist, I stopped. I just let go, and I did me in my truest sense, which is a balance of loving what I do in my music selections and the way I put them together. But I do enjoy reading a crowd. I do enjoy giving them what they want within the scope of what is truly who I am, not necessarily playing, cover music in my particular industry, but you're in my, in my bubble and what works for me as a DJ. But at this point, I could fall over tomorrow, since I've had that realization and feel like I have lived the life that I've wanted to, because I am truly my fullest version of myself. And I think my audience feels that when I perform. And the crowds I've had thus far are enough to last me a lifetime. But I'm really looking forward to the second half of this lifetime to have more of those experiences, for sure.
Definitely.
Anyone else want to chime in?
I'll just wrap. I agree with Alexis, with everybody saying. It's like, you have to be grateful to be in the space that we're in, to even have this conversation. Everyone's achieved so much. And, not my dad passed a couple of weeks ago, and he was 97 years old. So he was with us a long time. And one of the things that he said just a few weeks before he passed was, I'm ahead of the game. What do I have to regret? I am ahead of the game, and I thank the Lord. And I felt that, and I feel that way too. It's like, many of us are ahead of the game. We have so much to be blessed for, thankful for, and have accomplished so many amazing things. Just listening to everyone's story, you've all accomplished a lot, and I feel like that. I would be greedy if I was like, I got so much more to do. Yeah, we all got so much more to do, but it is a journey. I completely agree. And that's the gift is in the journey, not the destination.
Exactly.
Yep, I like that. The gift is in the journey,
Exactly.
not the destination. Some of the things I tell my students, I said, I want to make them, uh, whoever become this worldwide big person, that would be my satisfaction. I'm too old to, how what happens now. I mean, before, COVID and how they blow up a youngster to make them that. And if I was the roots of making that happen for someone young, that would be my satisfaction. So that's something that I'm striving for, that I want to do it. So I give them all the encouragement and all the knowledge. And one of the things I say, you need to wear me out, study me, work it hard, take this knowledge. I can't take it with me.
Mhm.
Take it, listen to me, work. And I asked one of my students the other day, I said, can you predict what I'm gonna play whenever you hear me? And they go, nope. I said, it's always different. I said, yep. You've seen me in many different crowds. You don't know what you're gonna get. Why? Because they watch how I read the crowd. And I tell them that. I said, I can't teach you how to read the crowd. I can only tell you, pay attention.
Mhm.
Pay attention. Don't go up in there rocking some goddamn techno in this Afro house crowd. You get stuff thrown at you. Just pay attention. And the other thing that the youth to keep me young or whatever get, because I have to learn how to work everything. So that's why I learned all these every piece of equipment, all that. And one of the other things I said, I don't want you to ever walk into a gig and you can't run it because you don't understand the equipment. And so that's one of the things that I teach, because the basis of it is all the same. First to listen, and or each one has a start and a stop button. The bass in or out, but don't walk in it because it's not your little controller, because you see two CDJs or something in a mixer. They all have the same thing. And just find it, use it, and work it, and don't let it scare the hell out of you, because it can. They got some super stuff out here. But I have to learn it because I have to teach it to them. So that keeps me
Yeah.
woo-wee,
Eva, I know you have a DJ school out there in Seattle. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing as far as teaching and how people are responding out there. If you can get on. Is your mic on? Turn your mic on.
Can you
There
hear
you go. You there? Now you're off again. Muted again.
Uh-oh.
Don't know what happened. It's like electromagnetic magic on magic.
There you go.
Um, Thanks, you guys. I first of all, I just want to say I really love hearing all your guys' stories, and I can relate to so many of you on so many different levels. And I wish I would have met you or crossed paths with you somewhere along the way earlier on, um,
It's never too late.
because
It's never too late.
those areas are very it's very much my heart and soul. You know, Chicago and Detroit especially, and New York as well. Um, and those and that's what inspired me to start the school, because you know there was so many, you know, different pieces of equipment, just to what you were saying, Stacy, that it, you know, the it's like Moore's law, you know, every couple years, computers and technology, it starts to accelerate. And you know, if you don't, I know DJs, a very very talented DJ specifically, who I kind of came up with, and he's a little bit older than me. There's a couple like Donald Glad, who's, you know, maybe 5 years my senior, but we kind of came up together in, you know, underground. And you know, it's that adaptability. You know, it's about how fast can you adapt. So with streaming, as well, like, I'm redesigning the studio for the academy, because before COVID hit, I was basically positioning the academy, but it wasn't really quite ready. But the response was just, it was like the demand for it was actually more than I could supply at the time. And so I kind of had to hold the line basically on it. And I did start doing some online lessons. I did an 8-year-old girl the other day that was a recommendation, through a well-known DJ here. And I wasn't quite sure if I wanted to do it at first, because you have to remember there's like, you know, through like Zoom was not cutting it at all. We used something called, it's called like Duo or something.
Google
Uh,
Duo. Google Duo.
yeah,
Yep.
so we used that, and that worked very well, because they were on an Android. I'm on an Android right now, but I'm not. I usually I'm an Apple all to the core. But I'm challenging myself to use. You know, I wasn't. I was like Android. I mean, who uses Android? You know, and when I started
I
using
do.
it,
I use Android.
I'm just playing.
I'm
Um,
applesauce, honey, all day.
Yeah, so it's just funny, you know, because the one thing that I loved about the Android right away, and what I'm usually always about, first of all, is the camera, you know. So I started taking pictures on this, and, you know, people loved it, and the response was amazing. So, you know, it's been a little touch and go as far as starting the academy. You know, I wasn't planning on staying in Seattle, but I was like, with all this going on, I mean, I just felt like, you know, no one's teaching, you know, just going back to all of your stories that you're talking about, you know, not losing the history. When I start seeing like what they're, you know, these, you know, kids are listening to these days, you know, and how they're getting it. And, but see, this is nothing new under the sun for me. I've always been like, oh God, you know, they're getting this, you know, like, okay, we got to do something, because this is just not okay with me, you know. Um, and I do see, I have to say, there's a level of hopelessness and despair, with a lot of young people, to the point where they just don't even want to try. Like they have such a fear of failure that they don't. And it's taken me a while to kind of like, what's wrong with these people, you know? And it's like, but that compassionate side to me is like, I try to remember what it was like when I started, you know, create like a child, you know, try to create without judgment. Um, so, you know, I've just been trying to be connected virtually without, you know, being in the physical so much. I mean, I have so many people that, you know, want to come and do it, or they want to play, or they just, you know, they want to jump on the equipment. And I'm just taking it easy right now, and just kind of being flexible with the climate, you know, of where things are at. But I'd love to connect with, those of you in different capacities. I've played female events, in the past, but it was never my calling card. That's not what I actually used to play drum and bass. I started a drum and bass night and it was all guys, and I've
I
always
love
been a bit
drum
of
and
a top.
bass.
What's that?
I was just saying I love drum and bass. It's just,
Yeah, I
actually,
love, I
I never
come,
have a crowd I can play it for, but I like it.
yeah, well, it all stems from, even when I mentioned working at Tower Records, it's really, I have a real funk, sense of rhythm. So Prince, is always like probably, my favorite, and all the, Midnight Star and Shannon. And, when I was in high school, I was on the radio, so that's where kind of all this comes from. Um, but I did that thing too, like you said, Stacy, where you sneak the record in. Like I would sneak Lime on the grid in at the top of the hour.
Hmm.
That's how
No
you
one
start
knew
new
what
music.
no one knew what Lime on the grid was,
Sneak it
and to
in.
this day,
Mhm.
that it was a place here called the Monastery. The Monastery. It was a church, and the thing is, the problem with the venues here right now is that they all suffer the same fate. They get turned into a parking lot. So I'm trying to stop that as much as I can. It's like put a hedge on it. Um, so I'm just kind of laying low right now, with the academy. But I welcome your
What's the name of your
suggestions and
academy?
pardon.
What's the name of your academy?
It's called Seattle DJ Academy,
That's cut and
and
dry. Nice.
I'd like
and
to
I
collab with you, because I have the lesson plans and all that, and the fact that I
okay,
got forced into being virtual with it, because we were in the
okay,
middle of class with high school, and and I just freaked out. I had to come up with
yeah,
how to teach this online, and
right,
we
exactly,
we were contracted, and I
yeah.
figured it out, but it was rough,
Yeah.
but
Well,
I
that's
figured it
why
out.
I
So
that's why I hit the pause button, because
yeah,
unless I, deliver it the way that, I believe would be in integrity with, the way the legends would want it to be taught,
hmm
the ones that aren't here anymore, the forefathers,
well, we're gonna
I'm not
push
talking
you.
about, not, Jesse and beyond, like um,
Okay.
you know, it's just keeping,
Forefather.
Free
keeping
Jesse.
keeping the integrity of the
You know what's
music.
interesting? It's interesting. I got how you get the Google News every day on your phone. It comes through with all these different stories. What's going on in the world?
Yeah,
Okay, so one of the stories today was mine. It was a resident advisor interview, right?
yeah,
And I did it months ago, and all of a sudden it just pops up. So I'm reading through it, and I came to a point where he's just like, well, I thought I was so good that I didn't need the chosen few anymore, so I left them behind in the dirt. And I'm like, whoa, I never said that. So I'm
yeah,
scrambling around, like, please
yep,
change this
yep,
right away, because I can't. If anybody sees this, they're gonna think I'm an asshole. Blah blah.
yep,
So
yep,
yeah,
yep,
it gets crazy with the
It
way
does.
people look at things and what happens. And Lord knows that I have to deflect so much, because
yeah,
every little thing I say gets taken out of context in so many
exactly.
different ways.
With that being said, it sounds like we can collaborate a little farther on some of the individual projects based on just the group here itself. But I'd like to ask ladies, where do we go from here? Let's talk about present challenges and some future solutions, maybe some upcoming projects that you folks have. Who wants to take a stab at that one first? Let's
I
do Alexis, since she's about to leave. I think you're on a different time
Think
zone.
about it just a little bit. Before I answer this question, I think it's important to give, from where I stand from in my time frame, because some of the women on this panel have been doing this for such a long time, so they have a different, starting point. But an inspiration for me with Colette, Dehoda, Lady D, DJ Heather, when they were touring the first female tour to hit the stream. Like it's that they were my inspiration. And I think it's really important to acknowledge all of them as being, what we're talking about now, they were talking about years ago, decades, literally decades ago, and they made it happen. It was one of my first DJ gigs. I was terrible. I think I like started my first record at 115 BPMs on accident and was like, oh no. And I was like trapped. But it's so exciting that all these years later, here we are. And there are so many women to choose from that Jessie has pulled to bring us here. And I think that's awesome. Thank you, Jessie. Because I'm inspired just sitting on this panel to know that I'm surrounded by women that are bosses that are really making it happen, and that they've been, sticking with it and, really making it happen as long as I have. And it's awesome. As far as where do we go from here and, present challenges, obviously we're living in the COVID world. I kind of addressed this a little bit with, adapting and pivoting to be successful and find a way to really reach our people, to provide the story behind our music and the way that we put it together. I think that continuing to have these panels, to write books, blogs, find a way to just share an intimate part of ourselves while we're promoting our shows, to let people know that we're real human beings behind the music, that we really care about what we're doing and how it's evolved and where we're at right now, is only going to continue to grow something that's been so established for so many years. Challenges are obviously when we're going to get ready to go back to work. But I think that, we're on our way. As long as we stay positive, that we don't waste too much energy worrying about what coulda, woulda, shoulda, or how bad things are, but finding a way to turn that energy into creative ways to perform. I mean, 2 weeks ago, I played outside in 25-degree weather, which I know is not for everyone, but with a pair of long johns and a fur coat, you can really jam for 30 people by fire pits. I'm not joking. I did it 2 weeks in a row because the first one was so successful. People wore their masks, they stood by fire pits, and the reason I'm doing it is because I can feel some of my community falling apart. I can feel their hearts breaking. I can feel their minds starting to implode. And it's our jobs as pioneers to, lead the charge in keeping people sane through dance, music, community. And the only way I can do it in St. Louis right now is to take it to the streets, which we did. Our future projects are to continue to find safe ways to stream, to gather, and to enter into the back half of 2021 with, systems in play to keep people safe, but celebrating. And I don't necessarily think it's just because of COVID. I think it heightens our awareness of how we can be, sanitarily hang out in a way where we maybe were taking advantage of that in the past, both with our global situation and then our human situation. And I hope that extends also to our human decency and the way that we welcome in women, our transgender sisters, our, bi, gay, all of everyone that deserves a right to have an existence within any community they're in, but especially in a community that was built on a foundation of acceptance and diversity. The reason we started Night Chaser was because it reflected what disco was in the 70s, a place where anybody who felt like they couldn't fit in had a place to go. And luckily, we've allowed for that to snowball into something that's really beautiful. And the vibration we create as women on stage, passionately pouring our hearts into what we do, is what resonates to our audience and keeps them thriving and not losing faith in love and music and community. And that's what I'm a part of. So this has been amazing to be here right now. And I'm really looking forward to growing these relationships moving forward.
Oh yeah, that's one of the best parts about doing this for me, is the fact that I get to connect with people that I only get to see once in a blue moon somewhere across the world, or, Detroit Electronic Music Festival, or Chosen Few Picnic, or, Burning Man, whatever it happens to be. But here we can connect with each other anytime, which means that we need to be a lot more connected now that we actually can come in each other's bedrooms and houses and kitchens and living rooms. I remember when this whole the first thing I did when this whole thing started was I jokingly said I'm doing the Corona tour, right? And day one was like in my bedroom. Day two was my kitchen. Day three was the bathroom, and so on and so forth. And it was funny then, but it's not so funny now, almost a year later. But we can make the best of it by doing what we're doing here. We're able to share and have the camaraderie that I love so much.
I always get this visualization of us all in these like hamster balls trying to dance and bumping into each other in these like giant balls.
Hey, we actually thought about that. We actually thought about doing that.
I forgot that the reason I met Christy was through you, Jesse. Do you remember that? I was like, I'm going to LA and I want to play music. How do I do that? You didn't even know me, Jesse, and you were connecting. And that was years ago.
That was a great night at Unity.
Community. Yeah.
Because Jesse is the man.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
He embodies what house music is about, is what it is, Jesse. You really do embody what house music stands for.
You know what it is for me? I must admit I'm a bit biased when it comes to women, because I just have this thing about women just have a different type of way of bringing things and purveying it. And you have something special that touches my soul. Very few guys have ever done it that way, but female vocalists in general. Let's start with Shaka Khan. Okay. Shaka Khan is my girl. All right. So anybody that tries to sing anything, that's who I'm measuring them by. Right. And it's just kind of like when it comes to female DJs, I'm the same way. You got to have that sensuality, that manipulation of being able to construe and mold a set, and directions and things like that. And I'm sorry, guys, a lot of guys just don't have it. So
love you, Jesse.
Love you.
Love you, Jesse.
It's been a pleasure, ladies. Thank you so much for your time today, for sharing your stories with us, for everything you endeavor to do and everything you share with our community. We really, truly appreciate you. I hope you guys remember to contribute to part 2 of Jesse's book, In Their Own Words. Feel free to be as long-winded as you want in that, because Jesse will make sure and take the time to edit all our stories. So don't be shy.
Yeah, that was a job within itself. But yes, thank you. Thank you all. I mean, there's so many people, so many, especially women, that I'd love to have on this show. And I mean, as you can see, there were 7 since, Tiffany, who knows where the heck she went, but she's always in her own world anyway. But, there's so many I would love to have in here. But as I said earlier, I wanted to do this because my girl, Lori, who I've actually loved since I was a kid, she couldn't make it last time.
You make it sound like I'm older than you, since we were kids.
You could have been younger than me. So you could have been younger than me, though.
Oh, no. I think I'm older than you.
Last night.
But no, I had to have her on the show. Yeah.
Stacy.
I said he didn't get me till last night. He just talking about Stacy. I'm like, well, what?
Actually, I sent you a message a while ago.
Oh, I didn't. Sorry. Yeah. Well, I've been busy, I've been busy, but I just I said, you busy tomorrow at 9:00? I'm like, really? But thank God I wasn't, and I was happy to do this. I was glad to be on the platform with everyone here.
I'm glad you're here. I'm glad
I saw Lori. I'm
here.
like, okay, it's on.
I'm glad everyone is here. I mean, my girl Christy, I don't get to see her at all anymore. They're out on the road, adventuring, wandering around these beautiful parts of the country, and I'm trying to live vicariously through them because I miss that. But you guys are really living their dreams, so.
Thanks, Steve.
Until
if
Chris
any of you, we do document it on YouTube. If any of you guys want to check any of that out.
Oh yeah. So once again, In Their Own Words Live. This is Lady DJ's part 2, and this has been amazing. Thank everyone.
Thank you guys so much. What an honor.
Let's keep in touch. Definitely. Let's keep in touch. Let's form some relationships from those who haven't met each other yet. And, let's keep this thing going and keep the faith, and house music will live on forever and ever.
Amen.
All night long.
See you guys.
Take care, folks.
Bye. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.